Hello. In this session, we're going to focus on one specific aspect of media literacy, that is critical understanding of the media. In the previous session, we have already seen how critical understanding is a crucial ability within media literacy. So crucial that it needs a specific session. Why? Our society is a society where media are omnipresent. Our society is completely mediatized. Try to imagine your existence without the media. We know that, for example, with Internet of the Things, soon we will be able to communicate with our fridge. We will be able to talk to him, let's say that it's a him, and he will answer. So that means that we receive so much information that we get infoxicated. Infoxication or media overload means that we receive so many information that we are unable to process it, and we run the risk of blacking out. Already in the 1st century AD, Seneca the Elder used to say that the abundance of book is distraction, but the term infoxication was actually invented by Alvin Toffler in the best-selling book Future Shock of 1970s. So it's based on the idea that the amount of input that the system received, if this amount is excessive, the receiver can black out. So this is the information overload. We receive so many information that we can black out, but it's not information overload. Actually, it's a filter failure. If our filters properly work, then we won't be overloaded. So we need some critical capacity able to show us what should be retained and what should be trashed, what should be revamped. Moreover, if it's true that we are overloaded, new technology promote the participation of technically everybody to the media. So we are prosumers, we are consumers and producers. So we receive so many information that if on the one hand it's positive that we can receive so many information, on the other side we have so much information that it becomes almost impossible to distinguish between true and false, between misleading information, between information that is accurate or not. We can actually talk about the post-truth society. The Oxford English Dictionary declared post-truth the word of the year in 2015. What is post-truth? The term was actually coined by the blogger David Roberts in 2010. And it's aimed to define a political culture in which politics, intended as public opinion and the media, is completely disconnected from policy, that is to say, the actual management of the political thing, of the res publica. And actually, it basically underlines this use of an emotional appeal where basically the truth is not important anymore. The important thing is getting an emotional response. Think about the 150 character of Twitter. How much information do we receive from that? Technically nothing, it's just an emotional response. And actually it dates back to the Hitlerian idea of repeat a lie, repeat it over and over, and this lie will become the truth. So, said this, we can also add another important thing. Internet gives us the illusion of plurality of information, and it's true that in internet everybody can have a voice, but by the end we know that media are more and more concentrated. And if we create an algorithm using on the one hand media concentration and on the other side the possibility offered by new technology, we find that nowadays big corporation can actually control what we do by using technologies such as CRM, such as SEO, by different data mining program that can control what we do. And our information, the information that we receive, is completely tailor-made to us. Actually, a study released by Stanford University found that 82% of middle schoolers couldn't spot authentic information from information labeled as sponsored content. They say they couldn't recognize between advertising and information. So, once we have said this, what is we need some critical abilities that provide us the ability to distinguish between what's interesting and what's not. What is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualize, analyze, synthesize, and evaluate information we gather from observation, experience, the media, etc., and that actually runs our action and our beliefs. So, critical thinking should be based on values that transcend subject matter divisions, such as clarity, accuracy, truthfulness, reliability, etc., etc. So how should we apply critical thinking to the critical understanding of the media? How can we do that? We can, basically, the most important thing is we should be able to, one, critical understanding of the media include two abilities. The first one is to explore, search for, and choose information according to one's interest, and the second is assigning value to this information according to different parameters such as honesty, once again our own interest, etc., etc. As we see here, trying to gather information from the internet may be as trying to drink a glass of water from a water hydrant. I say it seems technically impossible, but the key is always question the answer. Always question the answer you get. So let's see some example of problems that we can find looking for information in the media. The first and biggest obstacle is what we call fake news. Nowadays, most of the search engines are trying to create systems to avoid fake news. Fake news are becoming like a sort of epidemic in the media, basically because of the internet. Fake news has always existed in the media. Let's think about Orson Welles' War of the Galaxies and so on and so forth. But the internet somehow served as an expander of this, to the extent that it's almost impossible to distinguish truth from false from the internet. And social media are becoming the real, somehow natural environment for hoaxes. We have many examples. Among which, in the slide, you have an example that became very famous some years ago, but within fake news, we need to point out the increasing use of trolling and sock puppeting. Trolling is the creation of a fake identity in order to promote an idea on a product, and socket puppeting is basically the same, but socket puppeting is more presenting yourself as somebody else. Both can be used in many different things. No need to mention that nowadays many institutions have declared themselves worried for that. On the one hand, for the commercial use of that is say most of the commercial information that the information that we get is actually what we call brand content, and from a political perspective, that no need to mention what happened some years ago, some months ago, when the European Commission started investigating Russian intromission into the internet. And once again, there's no need to know what's going on with Russian intromission in American presidential election. So let's see other examples. Media manipulation. What is media manipulation? As we know, as Chomsky taught us in his masterpiece, Manufacturing Concept, media belongs to corporate companies, so they follow their own interests. So they may manipulate reality in order to switch our attention or in order to switch our opinion. In the slide, we have two examples. The first one shows how a single picture taken from different perspectives or carried or modified accurately can drove us to have a completely different understanding of the fact, and the other one shows us how simply changing the content may completely vary the meaning of a picture. On the other example, we have the language. What's in a word? Shakespeare used to say, what's in a word? The use of a language, the use of a specific word can completely change our understanding of things. This is an example of two different newspapers, one Italian and one Spanish, in which the word refugees and migrant are used in the same context. So by confusing a refugee and a migrant. We all know that a refugee is something completely different from a migrant, and the status of refugee is actually protected by the international law. A refugee is somebody who is running away from a conflict or a persecution, and it's protected by international law, while a migrant is somebody who chooses to improve their condition or his or her condition by moving to a new country. So why using these two words in the same articles? Is just a lack of accuracy, or it's just an attempt to move our emotional reaction? And this is something that we should always take care when we're reading a media, when we're watching television, when we're looking for information on the internet. So let's try to give you some practical suggestion on how to be critical in front of the media. The first suggestion that everybody should follow is always consider the source. Is the source reliable? Is the source well known? Does the source have something that makes me see that the source is reliable? In the slide we see an example by The Onion. It's an impossible news, but the source is The Onion. The Onion is a satirical newspaper, so we already know that this is a joke. In the second example, we see the second most important suggestion: always go behind the headline. Sometimes media manipulation is not only driven by the attempt to convince you about a political idea. Sometimes it's just that the media is just trying to get an emotional reaction to get more audience. So in this case, we have the example of panda porn, that of course is a very attractive headline, but actually the news is something, let's say, not that scandalistic. It's just about panda bears mating, so it's basically a veterinary news. The following suggestion is always consider and check the author. Is the author reliable? Is the author well known? Does the author know what he's talking about? And this picture shows one of the best examples of internet hoax. In this case, the author is more than reliable. It's Abraham Lincoln. But is it possible that Lincoln actually talked about the internet? No way. So always double check it. The following suggestion is always double check or triple check the data. In this example, we see Ebola. In the latest year, Ebola has become so fashionable in the media, to the extent of considering the hypothesis of an epidemic of Ebola. This fact check shows us that Ebola still is one of the less important causes of death in Africa. A simple flu is more deadly than Ebola, so always double check the data. And finally, possibly the most important suggestion is always consider, take into account, consult a plurality of sources, as much sources as possible, so that you make sure that you have different representation of the reality and you can be able to create your own opinion and your own idea about a certain fact.